Alright everybody, I want to do a quick video on wind. Alright, so we've talked a lot about how to make your tree, how to train your tree, but we haven't talked about animation and what to do with it once you've built it. So there is on the X Level website a tutorial on doing wind. You can check that out. I will move through this fairly quickly, but there's some key things I want to kind of address that are really more about like production and fixing some of the hiccups, because the tutorial that's presently out there, it doesn't really address some of the issues that you could run into and how to fix those issues. Really, there's one big issue. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is you have your tree, right? And you need to go to helpers and X Level, and you need to create a wind helper. So this is not, a force from Max. This is a special X Level helper. I'm just going to rotate it. The orientation of this guy does matter. And make his icon a little bit bigger. The fan size doesn't matter. The wind speed does matter. Okay. So this perturb speed, this is going to basically like oscillate the speed of the wind. So it kind of comes and goes and comes and goes and comes and goes. Generally, I have this on. And you have to finesse these values quite a bit in tandem with your tree. So you have a wind, you have a tree. The next thing you need to do is, alright, so I've got my like trunk basically, right? So generally, in a tree, like the trunk isn't really blowing in the wind unless it's like a major gust or something like that. So I avoid that layer. Then you've got this, like your primary branches. Depending on the level of wind that you're looking to add, I do or do not include these. So when do I not? I don't when I'm just looking for kind of gentle rustling in the trees, right? You don't want too much just like crazy movement. It becomes over exaggerated. It doesn't look real. When do I do add the wind to this if it's going to be a much stronger wind and I'm really looking to like get some motion. But even then, I don't let these move too much because it will look very weird if this branch is moving a ton and this guy's not, right? Alright, so then we come to this level. So this is our, main branching level here. And I definitely want this to blow in the wind. So on the direction modifiers, I'm going to add a wind modifier. And you don't have to create the wind helper over there. I just wanted you to know that that's where you can go to get it. You can create it on this tab by saying create wind object, and it will create the very same one. I already created one, so I'm just going to pick the one that I created. Alright, so now in viewport, you will now be able to see this blow in the wind, right? So all looks good in the world. Now, this looks a little bit too kind of like springy to me. Pretty much always right out the gate, I am bringing down my scale frequency to like 0.5 and tweaking this flexibility. So you'll see the higher the value, the more kind of crazy this is. The lower the value, kind of this. Let's make this guy more stiff. Okay, so now maybe that's something more realistic that I'm going for. And so now we get into like this perturb, and this is basically just a noise that it's throwing through. So you're getting like peaks and valleys of the speed, and this 6 is the fastest it's going to be. So you could say like, all right, I really want like my general wind to be pretty gentle. I want it to be like 2 feet, right? And then the perturb can add up on top of that know, kind of more speed whenever it kind of comes through. And you don't want to go too crazy, but generally I gotta kind of pull it up a little bit. And you're not going to see it as much on this level because of how stiff I made it, but it's just looking for some like variation so everything isn't moving you know, so uniformly. Alright, so let's say I was happy with that. And now I've got my little twigs. And as always, you can, of course, over here, copy and paste and see what you got. So, you know, these guys, they're probably less flexible, or sorry, more flexible, less stiff. And then I'll generally make their scale frequency just a little bit more. So those little guys are going to have like more motion. All right, and then the leaves. The cool thing with the leaves and that what you want to do is you want to turn on this axial rotation. Okay, this is going to help them like spin. You might not see, you're definitely not really going to notice it with just the lines, but if I put a mesh on this, you will definitely see it. But what you definitely do not want to do is keep this max angle at 90 degrees. That you want to set at like 35, depending on the look you want. Maybe slightly higher, maybe even lower. Sometimes I've clamped it at like 10. It kind of depends the look that you're going for. Real quick, I did not make any meshes for this, but in order to best show, it's actually all right. Oh, nope. All right. Okay, so now that I've got all this mesh and everything, I'm not going to be able to play in viewport. So I'm going to do a play blast of this guy. And let me see what sure my resolution is set to something crappy. Yep. All right. Create preview. 100%. And here in the preview, you can see these guys kind of like rocking and moving that's that radial, setting for the leaves. I'm not going to wait for the whole damn thing. Okay, so like here you have a pretty good idea, like too damn much. A lot of the times, we go more subtle than not. So, like, you might be looking at the branches and saying, well, it's not really moving all that much, whereas, I'm generally not trying to, like, shove it down your throat that everything's, like, animating in the wind. It's just kind of giving a general ambiance of sorts. So, but in the interest of interest, I'm going to make this blow in the wind a little bit more. And this perturb speed can actually like really affect those leaves. It's like this wind speed is going to this is where it's like sometimes it's best to have like two winds. One wind that's doing branches and stuff like that, then another wind that's doing leaves and whatnot. And that's totally fine. You can absolutely do that. Still too much. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more like movement. Let's go talk to those guys. Alright, so let's bring down their scale frequency. Okay, so maybe, I don't know, maybe something like that. I think like, these guys are a little too gooey. These guys probably aren't moving quite enough, the leaves. And when I'm working on like a really big tree, the best advice I can give you for setting up the wind animation on that is take your tree and copy it. Isolate like a branch so that you're really working in like one area of that tree, and turn everything else off, like get it so it's, you know, just kind of pared down to just one area, and test the settings out on that branch, get that working, and then apply it to your bigger tree. I don't normally like sit and wait for these play blasts on a bigger tree. I just kind of like make one branch or like a shitty little like sample thing like this in order to test the settings that I'm going to use in the scene, and then I apply them to the large hero tree. This could take, you know, a long time on a serious tree. Okay, sure. You know, it's kind of like, what's the look you're going for? I think it's nice to have these guys kind of rocking a bit and doing their thing. So I don't know. I think maybe it's a little bit much. So this is, again, this like max angle. So let's clamp it down to 25 and do the same thing again. So it's kind of, you know, up to you. Do you want this is with less? So the other thing, and I'm trying to see if I'm catching notice of it anywhere, because I made this tree with like default settings as far as step size, you know, the steps here, you're not seeing some stuff that can come up. So, you know, what I've taught you guys is optimize your tree. So if you don't need all of these points, you know, get rid of them, right? So obviously this is not an optimized tree. However, this tree is going to blow in the wind better than a tree. Like if I start coming in here and I bet I can make this do it, in fact. So let's I wonder, because order of operations matters here. This would actually be an interesting test. I haven't done this. That's fine. These guys, they don't need much in the first place, the leaves. Okay, so let's see if we can get it to do it. Basically, when you don't have enough step size, there it is. You just saw that branch like, wha-bam! Like, he's like kung fu chopping up there. Like, what the hell are you doing? That's because you don't have enough samples, basically, in your branch. So the only way that I know of to get around that is to have a smaller step size. Yeah, see that pop? See that? So in a tree that you've optimized, you've done your due diligence, and you were working hard to like keep it down low in poly count, that's going to be inharmonious with animating it in the wind. You will get these pops, you'll get all sorts of nasty shit. What do? Well, if you really want this thing blowing in the wind, you're going to have to take the memory hit, and you're going to add steps back to the splines. So that is the workflow. There's a compromise. You can see these guys pop into. They go whoop. There's that compromise. Okay, so you're going to have a higher poly tree because it needs more samples, and in order to, you know, properly interpolate between frames and stuff like that. So that's the biggest thing I can tell you to watch out for, and that's the best way I know of to fix it. If one of you comes up with a better way, let me know, because that's like the bane of my existence. So, I think that pretty much covers wind and wind animation in a tree. As I said, you can have multiple winds. You don't have to use the same icon. You could have one wind that's blowing. You can even stack winds up on top of each other. You know, you can be creative with these. So, like, one can be kind of a constant wind, and then the other one could be, more kind of turbulent or something like that. I've even messed with throwing, like in the curve editor, take this guy's wind speed and throw a controller on it, like a noise or something, and then you can, obviously you want it to be all greater than 0, but you can get kind of like a turbulent noise pattern off of just the speed alone in doing something like that. And every once in a while I've gotten something halfway decent from that. So just some other stuff to think about when you're getting into this. Woo! Alright, so that is, I'm going to save this and post it up for you guys. Wind tree end. So you can have a look at it. It's nothing special. I'm sure you guys can make something way fucking cooler. So that's that. All right.